Crimea is under fire, an oil depot is on fire. A loud bang and a bright flash in Sochi. Russians demand more. Wait, oh, she was good. Come on, load another mallet. Significantly burned in the Samara region. Coalition against Russia. There will be even more help.
The United States is turning to force. Strategic bombers are being sent to Europe, and long-range weapons to Ukraine.
Trump cornered Putin. There will be no tomahawks.
We also need tomahawks for the United States of America. We have a lot of them, but we need them.
A complete rout. The occupiers have gone to meet Kobzon. The delights of the Russian army instead of captivity, suicide.
Temple, chin, forehead, blow yourself up with a grenade. And this thing here, pull it out, they just give it to you right in front of you. Study it and use it.
We've prepared a lot of topics for discussion for you today, friends. We'll discuss the super important ones right now. Now, for the downsides from Alexandra Prepodobnaya, we have Denis Popovich, military observer, joining us. Hello, Denis. We're glad to see you as always. Let's start with this. Ukrainian forces continue to demonstrate successes in the Novopavlivka direction. Thanks to the coordinated and precise actions of the 214th Separate Assault Battalion and also the 5th Separate Assault Brigade, it was possible to completely liberate the settlements of Alexiivka and Stepno. This was reported by the head of the Assault Units Department. There, the Russians are suffering significant losses, both in personnel and military equipment. Total irrecoverable losses amounted to 117 servicemen. I would like you to comment on how much we are seeing a trend in these counteroffensive actions and the liberation of settlements. Please give your assessment.
Near Pavlovsk, for example, it was a very dangerous direction overall. There, the enemy was advancing actively, relatively actively. By the standards of the scale of this war, we remember the September analytics, relatively small, cultural, but relatively large, or rather the largest territorial losses for Ukraine, so to speak. And let's say the scale of the Russian Federation's offensive specifically in this direction, which includes, among other things, 3 regions. These are Zaporizhzhia, Donetsk, and Dnipropetrovsk. If this direction had continued to develop further, theoretically new challenges could have arisen. Specifically in the Zaporizhzhia region, not to mention the deputies themselves. The trend of these counteroffensive actions is quite understandable. It can be confidently stated that the offensive plans the Russian Federation had set for itself back in the spring, for the summer, and perhaps for the beginning of autumn have failed. Now the Russian army is gradually becoming exhausted, and the pace of the offensive is slowing down. All of this is happening because of losses. All of this, in my opinion, is already having its impact on the front and on strikes against the Russian oil industry. In other words, it is a combination of reasons that has led to the Russian army's offensive gradually slowing down, giving us the opportunity to take the initiative in counterattacks.
All right, let's talk some more about the excellent interception by our naval intelligence. In the radio interception of the Russian group, it's clear that the Russian invaders shot down their own Su-30 SM, which was carrying out missions in the northwestern part of temporarily occupied Crimea. According to the military, both engines of the Russian aircraft caught fire and the crew ejected. The General Staff suggests that the occupiers actually shot down the fighter jet with their own air defense systems. You know what's interesting? For our viewers, if possible, let's play a short comment from Putin, who said that Russian air defense works perfectly and never shoots down its own targets. If possible, colleagues, let's listen to it. So, if we can just listen a little, let's do it right now. If not, we'll show it later. Let's do it.
Our air defense system, by definition, cannot strike its own aircraft. There are friend or foe systems installed, and no matter how many times the operator presses the button, our air defense system would not have activated.
So, was it a technical failure that occurred then, or what exactly happened?
The thing is, There are friend or foe systems. They're installed on the aircraft, yes. From what I know about air defense, I studied this topic. Even back in Soviet times, these systems were sold, but it's quite possible that now they've become, let's say, more advanced, if you can even say that about Russian air defense systems. Maybe now the friend or foe system blocks the missile launch, but I doubt that's actually possible. It simply indicates that the object in front of you is friendly, your own, and shouldn't be shot down. Everything else, let's say, is left to the discretion of the crew or the crew commander. That is, if the air defense system, if the surface-to-air missile complex is operated by people. If someone shot down their own plane, that's a sign of idiocy on the part of whoever gave the launch order. I can't say anything else about it. That's it. If he saw that it was his own plane and the situation was such, well, what other plane could possibly appear over Crimea, really, besides a Russian one? There's just nowhere else for them to come from. It's impossible. So only your own plane could have appeared there. So, if a unit under the command of some officer shot down its own plane, that's nothing but a sign of the idiocy of the person who gave such an order.
Well, yes, by the way, the Z channels have confirmed the loss of that very Su-30 last night in Crimea. Well, that's great. The more Russian planes shot down, the better.
Do you understand how it works? So there's a radar station that scans the airspace. When it detects an aerial target, in this case a plane, the crew operating the anti-aircraft missile system's console understands that something is flying in the sky. Nothing else could have appeared there except a Russian plane. In other words, a Russian fighter jet or any fighter jet is a target that an experienced anti-aircraft crew could never mistake for anything else. There is a specific flight pattern, a certain behavior unique to this type of target, so it's impossible to confuse a fighter jet with a passenger plane, or with different types of passenger planes, which fly at different altitudes and speeds. It's simply impossible to mix them up. In the same way, it's impossible to confuse an airplane with a cruise missile. A cruise missile has its own distinct flight pattern. A fighter jet flies differently, and anyone who knows what they're talking about will agree with me that these targets behave completely differently. And the air situation at that time was not such that it would have been possible to confuse them. There wasn't a dogfight going on. There weren't a lot of planes flying in a certain section of the sky within a large sector of airspace. Most likely it was just a single plane that for some reason that crew shot down. They mistook it for something else. There's no way to explain this except for incompetence, human error, and the human factor.
Dennis, I'd like to ask you about something else. Last night, on October 17th, Russia's Kuban region came under drone attack. According to reports, Sochi, Adler, Sirius, and the entire Kuban were under attack by our drones all night. Students and hotel residents were made to feel a bit like Ukrainians. And right now, confirmations about the strikes and their consequences are still being clarified. Local public pages wrote that indeed everything was flying, and they claimed that everything was shot down. But is that really the case? And could you please comment on our overall potential for strikes in these directions? Adler, Sochi, Kuban. How well have the Russians organized their air defense systems there now, if at all? How prepared are they for Ukrainian drones?
It's too early to judge this, just as it's too early to say that a Russian Su-30 plane was shot down. There are only two personal confirmations. But a strike on southern Russia is not the first such action. Right now, we need to figure out what was actually hit, and only after that draw any conclusions. But again, this is not the first action. Oil refineries located in that part of the Russian Federation have been hit repeatedly, as well as terminals responsible for the transshipment of petroleum products. In other words, the south of Russia is quite well covered by our strike capabilities, which can reach much farther. We also remember that strikes have reached Bashkiria, hitting our oil refineries there as well. That's why the range of our UAVs is quite significant.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Let's talk about something else now. An American company specializing in drone software development, together with an unnamed Ukrainian company for obvious security reasons, is creating a long-range strike drone that will be called the Artemis YLM-20. The drone has a flight range of over 1,500 kilometers and carries a warhead with 45 kilograms of explosives. The drone has visual guidance and can also operate autonomously using artificial intelligence algorithms. An interesting collaboration. According to the developers, this drone has already undergone full-scale testing, including ground launch, navigation with and without GPS, long-range transit, and ground detonation. What do you think of this collaboration? How effective could it be for us? So what tasks will these drones actually perform if we do end up seeing them? Widespread use.
Judging by the range of 1,500 kilometers, this is a deep strike drone. It will target objects located deep within the territory of the Russian Federation. That's clear. As for the collaboration, it's currently developing very actively. This week I visited Brussels at NATO headquarters, where there was a meeting of the defense ministers of the alliance member countries and a session of the NATO Ukraine Council. There was also the Ramstein coalition, and as a result, one of the outcomes of that day, the 15th, was precisely the joint production of various types of drones and the financing of Ukrainian production of different types of drones, which our foreign partners, primarily Europeans, are ready to invest in. These are both frontline drones and drones for deep strikes on the territory of the Russian Federation. This also includes the procurement and funding of air defense systems and so on. In other words, this collaboration is now developing very actively, and this is not surprising since Ukraine is offering innovative solutions both in the production of such drones and in their tactical applications. All of this is understandable because we are at war, and right now we are essentially the side that is writing new chapters in military affairs, specifically related to the use of various drones.
All right. There's another topic I'd like to discuss with you. The thing is, Zelensky is meeting with Trump today, and in the context of the war, of course, I want to ask you, what do you think about this? And of course, whether Trump will meet with Putin is already an international question. I'll leave that to other experts. I want to ask you about weapons. With what results should the Ukrainian delegation return from Washington? And most importantly, do you believe it? After yesterday's post from Trump, who is planning to meet with Putin, does it seem to you that we will actually get Tomahawks?
The thing is, let me start from the beginning.
Please do.
In fact, the very choice of Budapest as the meeting place is quite interesting from a geographical standpoint. That is, how exactly Putin's plane is supposed to get into Budapest is a mystery to me. Considering that Hungary is surrounded by countries whose airspace should be closed to Putin's plane, how they are going to let it through and who will be persuading them to allow Putin's plane to enter Budapest is a big mystery to me. Let's see how things unfold. Now, regarding the Tomahawks, I was a big skeptic, even when everyone was shouting that the Tomahawks were about to be approved. They've already shown the ground-based launcher, and now it's just a matter of time. I was very skeptical about us receiving Tomahawks for various reasons. One of those reasons is the small number of ground-based launches. Only a handful were ever produced. And even if they were given to us all that exist, we still wouldn't be able to provide a massive launch of such missiles. And a massive launch is necessary to break through air defenses and reach the target, even when we're talking about cruise missiles. That's why I was a skeptic. And the very political decision that Donald Trump has to make, and as we all understand, only he can make it, made me even more skeptical. But the truth is, it was confirmed. As soon as Trump talks to Putin, he immediately changes his position, immediately backs down, and immediately starts some kind of calculated negotiations, even though it's clear that these negotiations are just a stalling tactic that Putin needs to continue military actions. He managed to buy himself more time very skillfully. As for Tomahawks, I certainly don't expect any now. Today's meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump, I would be glad to be wrong, but I don't expect anything regarding Tomahawks from today's meeting. Perhaps some other decisions will be made. Well, what kind of decisions? Well, I won't speculate. The good thing is that in Brussels, again, I'll return to that meeting that took place on October 15th. A decision was made to expand the pool of countries willing to invest their money in purchasing American weapons. And these American weapons will be made available to the armed forces of Ukraine so they can continue the fight. That's the good news this week. Other than that, to be honest, I don't expect anything particularly groundbreaking.
While we've been talking, a message appeared on Telegram saying that last night, Special Operations Forces struck another oil depot and the guard plant in the Saki district on the Crimean Peninsula. But again, strikes on oil depots after the Feodosia oil depot have, in my opinion, already become a kind of proud tradition, hitting facilities that the occupiers use for their army's needs. Tell me, please, so do you think such special operations will continue after this meeting? How important is it that they continue? I mean, strikes on the Russian oil industry?
It is incredibly important that they continue. In fact, personally, I see this as the key to stopping the war. The broader and more systematic these strikes are, the more targets are hit, the closer we will be to the day when we can say that the war, if not ended, could at least give way to some kind of truce, a general truce. Not just on paper, not just in Putin's words, not after, let's say, some communication with Vitkov and so on, but a real truce. Why? Because without fuel, it is impossible to wage war. Without fuel, it is impossible to wage war in today's world. Even now, there is an impact, there is influence on the situation at the front. Not only at the front, but also on the internal situation in the Russian Federation from these strikes on the Russian oil industry. These strikes need to continue further. This is the key to at least pausing the war, if not ending it, to putting it on hold.
Well, what I want to say is this. This question from Amagavkov, even the Ukrainian member of parliament, Yehor Chernev, says that it has been officially put on pause. And tell me, please, is there any alternative to what we might get during this window of opportunity? Because we all perfectly understand that Putin has a certain objective. Now, in 2 to 3 weeks, he will meet with Trump. So after that, or before that, there will again be these few weeks of preparations between the American and Russian working groups. Well, then it's already New Year and then Christmas, and for another 6 months, Ukraine will be under fire again. Tell me, please, at this point, if there is no Amagavkov, what can we expect to get?
Well, to be honest, I don't expect anything at all, because you can see the Trump method of action at work. That is, the tomahawks we're talking so much about now are important, not because we might get them, but because they're being talked about at all. In my opinion, that's where the real, almost sacred meaning lies. They're being discussed. Trump is saying that he'll give Ukraine tomahawks if Putin doesn't agree to end the war. In Russia, they understand perfectly well that if tomahawks are delivered in a certain quantity, then the oil industry will be in even worse shape. Because it's one thing when a drone with a 50-kilogram warhead hits, and quite another when a tomahawk with a warhead of over 400 kilograms strikes. In other words, there would be little left of the oil depot. They don't want things in Russia to reach that stage, so they reached out to Trump and offered to continue negotiations in order to buy time. During the pause, which is inevitable while preparing for this meeting, they will continue to strike Ukraine. So they're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. They're delaying the moment of escalation from the United States, giving Trump another chance to talk, essentially trying to soften his stance, and at the same time, they're striking Ukrainian territory, causing us even more problems. This is Putin's tactic, dragging things out, and unfortunately, Trump is playing along with this tactic because he isn't taking the final step. Counting on the fact that Putin will support his peace initiatives and will eventually agree to the deal that he is so eager to push through. Since he wants to present himself as a peacemaker, that's the whole cycle, basically. Yes, right now we're entering yet another cycle, which will only lead to the fact that in 2 months, Trump will realize that this round of negotiations has basically led nowhere, and he'll need to play a new card. What that new card will be is hard to say. In my opinion, actually, for us, the more practical option would be JASSM missiles. Long range up to 1,000 kilometers. We have the appropriate carriers for this. These are F-16 fighter jets. In principle, it would be good to get such missiles. I don't believe in tomahawks at all, not in the slightest. I'm very, very skeptical about it.
And just to wrap up, let me ask you briefly, do you think Putin will fly to Budapest?
Well, if Trump convinces Romania, let's look at the map of Europe and see which countries surround Hungary. He has only one route, through Romania or through Bulgaria or through Serbia. So if Trump convinces Romania, Bulgaria, and maybe Serbia and lets him through himself, then Putin will get to Budapest. If he doesn't convince them, then honestly, I don't know where he could meet Trump, in which country in the world. Most likely the local negotiations would have to be moved to the territory of a state that agreed to receive Putin as a person who, by the way, is under an international criminal court warrant. He is a war criminal and should be arrested in those countries that have ratified the Rome Statute. There are certain difficulties with that as well. That's why taking Putin to any European country is very problematic in and of itself.
Understood.
Let's see what decisions will be made.
Well, yes, or maybe they'll have to move from Alaska to Chukotka for this meeting. Thank you very much. Dennis, military observer, was on the air of Ukraine today. All the best to you.